I still remember the exact moment my perfect wedding turned into my worst nightmare. It was 11:47 p.m. on what should have been the happiest night of my life, and I was lying alone in the bed I was supposed to share with my new husband, Marcus. The silk nightgown I'd bought specially for tonight felt cold against my skin as I stared at the ceiling, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. Just 3 hours earlier, Marcus had looked into my eyes during our first dance and whispered that he loved me more than anything in the world. Now he was downstairs on the couch, claiming he was too tired to be with me. Too tired? On our wedding night? The man who had stayed up until 3 a.m. playing video games just last week was suddenly too tired to spend time with his new wife. My name is Zara, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a teacher at the local elementary school, and up until tonight, I thought I knew everything about the man I'd just married. Marcus and I had been together for 3 years. He was 31, worked at a construction company, and seemed like the most caring, honest person I'd ever met. His mother, Delilah, had always been sweet to me, welcoming me into their family with open arms. She was 52 and had raised Marcus alone after his father left when Marcus was just 10 years old. The wedding had been beautiful. We'd saved for 2 years to have it at the Riverside Gardens venue, and everything had gone perfectly. My best friend Kendra had been my maid of honor, and Marcus's best friend Tyrone had been his best man. Even my usually critical mother, Beverly, had tears in her eyes during the ceremony. Delilah had hugged me so tight after the I do's and said, "Welcome to the family, sweet girl. You're the daughter I always wanted." But now, lying here in the dark, those words felt hollow. The house was too quiet, except for the sound of the TV downstairs, where Marcus was supposedly sleeping. We were staying at Delilah's house for our wedding night because our apartment was being painted, and she had insisted we use her guest room, which was the nicest room in the house. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. Was this normal? Did all marriages start this way? My sister Imani had warned me that the first year of marriage was hard, but she never mentioned anything like this. I picked up my phone and almost called her, but it was nearly midnight, and I didn't want to worry her. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was the TV downstairs getting louder, but as I listened more carefully, I realized the sound was coming from somewhere else entirely. It was coming from down the hall, from Delilah's bedroom. And it definitely wasn't the TV. The sounds were soft at first, like whispered voices. Then they got clearer, and my blood turned ice cold. Someone was moaning. A woman was moaning, and it sounded like Delilah. But that was impossible. Sabulza, right? She lived alone, and there hadn't been any other cars in the driveway when we got home from the reception. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the stress of the wedding was making me hear things that weren't there. But the sounds continued, getting louder and more obvious. Then I heard a man's voice, low and deep, saying something I couldn't quite make out. My stomach dropped. There was definitely a man in Delilah's room. But who could it be? And why hadn't I seen anyone else come into the house? I crept out of bed as quietly as possible and tiptoed to the bedroom door. The old wooden floors creaked under my feet, and I froze, terrified that someone would hear me. But the sounds from Delilah's room continued, which meant they were too busy to notice anything else. My hand trembled as I slowly turned the doorknob and opened the door just a crack. The hallway was dark, but there was a thin line of light coming from under Delilah's bedroom door. The moaning was much clearer now, and there was no mistaking what was happening in that room. I should have gone back to bed. I should have put on headphones and pretended I never heard anything. But something deep in my gut told me that I needed to know who was in there with my mother-in-law. What if she was in danger? What if someone had broken into the house? I tiptoed down the hallway, staying close to the wall to avoid the creaky floorboards. My bare feet were silent on the cold hardwood. As I got closer to Delilah's door, the sounds became unmistakable. This wasn't a break-in or an emergency. This was definitely two adults having a very intimate moment. But who was the man? Delilah had been single for as long as I'd known her. She never talked about dating anyone, and Marcus had never mentioned his mother seeing anybody. In fact, just last month, she joked about how she was too old and set in her ways to find love again. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to hear the man's voice more clearly. Maybe it was a neighbor, or maybe she'd been secretly dating someone and just hadn't told us yet. Part of me felt terrible for listening, but I couldn't stop myself. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, especially with Marcus downstairs acting so strange. The man's voice got louder, and he said something that made my blood freeze in my veins. "That's my good girl," he whispered. "You know exactly what I like." I knew that voice. I knew it better than my own. It was the same voice that had said, "I do," to me just hours earlier. It was the same voice that had been whispering sweet things in my ear for 3 years. It was Marcus. My legs nearly gave out from under me. I grabbed the wall to keep from falling, my mind spinning with confusion and horror. Marcus was supposed to be downstairs on the couch. Marcus was supposed to be too tired to be with his own wife. But here he was, in his mother's bedroom, doing things that made my stomach turn. I wanted to burst through that door and scream at both of them. I wanted to demand an explanation for what was happening, but my body wouldn't move. I just stood there in the dark hallway, listening to my husband of 6 hours betray me in the most disgusting way possible. "We have to be quiet," Delilah whispered back. She might hear us. She was talking about me. They were talking about me while they were doing this horrible thing together. The woman who had hugged me and called me daughter was worried that I might catch her sleeping with my husband on our wedding night. My mind raced with questions that made me feel sick. How long had this been going on? Was this why Marcus had been so distant lately? Was this why he'd suddenly started working late so many nights? Was this why Delilah had been so eager to have us stay at her house tonight? I heard movement in the room, and panic shot through me. What if they came out and found me standing there? What would I even say? How do you confront your husband and mother-in-law about something like this? I rushed back to the guest room as quietly as possible and closed the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely turn the lock. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I had just discovered. My wedding dress was hanging in the closet, still beautiful and white and perfect. Just hours ago, I had been the happiest woman in the world. Now I felt like my entire life had been a lie. Had Marcus ever really loved me? Or had I just been some kind of cover story for whatever sick relationship he had with his own mother? I grabbed my phone and started to call Kendra, then stopped. What would I even say? "Hey, remember how you were my maid of honor today? Well, my husband is cheating on me with his mother." It sounded insane even in my head. The sounds from down the hall continued for another 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. I sat there in the dark, listening to my marriage fall apart before it had even really begun. When everything finally went quiet, I heard footsteps in the hallway and the sound of the guest bathroom door closing. A few minutes later, I heard Marcus's heavy footsteps on the stairs, going back down to the living room. He was probably going back to his spot on the couch, ready to pretend he'd been there all night if I asked him about it in the morning. I laid back down and pulled the covers over my head, but I knew I would never be able to sleep. How was I supposed to face either of them tomorrow morning? How was I supposed to pretend that I didn't know what they had done? As I lay there in the darkness, one thought kept running through my mind over and over again. If this was what Marcus was doing on our wedding night, what else had he been lying to me about? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? The clock on the nightstand glowed 1:23 a.m. when I finally heard Marcus's snores drifting up from the living room. He was sleeping peacefully while my entire world had just crumbled around me. But I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to make sure they both paid for what they had done to me. After all, they had no idea that I knew their disgusting secret. And sometimes the best revenge comes from the shadows. But before I continue, drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to help us reach that big 1,000 subscriber milestone. We're so close, and every single subscriber counts. It's completely free for you, but it means everything to this channel. Also on the final screen, I've left a video and a playlist that I promise will surprise you. Seriously, don't miss them. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to be part of the journey. I must have gotten maybe 2 hours of sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear those sounds again, and my stomach would twist into knots. When morning came, I lay in bed pretending to be asleep, listening to the sounds of Marcus and Delilah moving around the house like nothing had happened. Around 8 a.m., I heard a gentle knock on the guest room door. "Zara, honey, I made breakfast for you and Marcus," Delilah called through the door in her sweet, fake voice. "Come join us when you're ready." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her breakfast. Instead, I took a deep breath and called back, "I'll be down in a few minutes." I got dressed slowly, trying to figure out how I was going to act normal around both of them. In the mirror, I looked terrible. My eyes were red and puffy, and my skin was pale. I put on some makeup to try to hide the fact that I'd been crying, but I still looked like someone who'd had the worst night of her life. When I walked into the kitchen, they were both sitting at the table like a perfect little family. Marcus was reading something on his phone, and Delilah was pouring orange juice into 3 glasses. The whole scene made me want to throw up. "There's my beautiful wife," Marcus said, jumping up to give me a hug. The same hands that had been touching his mother last night were now wrapped around me. I had to use every ounce of strength not to push him away. "Good morning," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange even to me. "You look tired, sweetheart," Delilah said, studying my face with fake concern. "Didn't you sleep well?" The nerve of this woman. She was asking me if I slept well when she knew exactly why I hadn't slept. I wanted to tell her that it's hard to sleep when your mother-in-law is busy seducing your husband in the next room. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just excited about starting our new life together." Marcus smiled and squeezed my hand. "Me too, baby. I'm sorry I was so tired last night. The wedding was just exhausting, you know? But tonight will be different, I promise." Tonight? Was he planning to be with me tonight and then sneak off to his mother's room again later? The thought made my skin crawl. Delilah had made pancakes, bacon, and scrambled eggs. Normally, I would have been touched by the effort, but now every bite tasted like cardboard. I kept watching both of them, looking for signs of what had happened between them. Did they touch each other when they thought I wasn't looking? Did they share secret glances? "So what are your plans for today?" Delilah asked, cutting her pancakes into neat little pieces. "We need to go back to our apartment and see if the painting is finished," Marcus said. "Hopefully we can move back in tonight." "Oh, there's no rush," Delilah said quickly. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. I love having you both here." I bet she did. Having us both under the same roof made it easier for her to steal my husband whenever she wanted. After breakfast, Marcus went upstairs to shower, and I found myself alone in the kitchen with Delilah. She started washing the dishes, humming some old song like she was the happiest woman in the world. "Delilah," I said carefully, "can I ask you something?" She turned around with a bright smile. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind? Have you ever thought about dating again? You're still young and beautiful. It seems like you could find someone nice if you wanted to." Her smile flickered for just a second, so quick I almost missed it. "Oh, you know me. I'm set in my ways. Besides, I have Marcus, and now I have you. That's all the family I need." The way she said, "I have Marcus," made my stomach turn. She definitely had him in ways that no mother should ever have her son. "But don't you get lonely sometimes?" I pressed. "Living here all by yourself?" "I'm never lonely," she said, turning back to the dishes. "I have everything I need right here." That afternoon, Marcus and I drove to our apartment to check on the painting. The walls were dry, and the smell of paint was almost gone. We could definitely move back in, but when I suggested it, Marcus seemed hesitant. "Maybe we should stay one more night at Mom's," he said, "just to make sure the smell is completely gone. You know how sensitive you are to chemical smells." I wasn't sensitive to chemical smells at all. He was making that up because he wanted another night with his mother. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "Actually, I think it's fine," I said firmly. "Let's move back in tonight." "Are you sure? I don't want you to be uncomfortable." "I'm sure." Marcus looked disappointed, which told me everything I needed to know. He had been planning to spend another night in Delilah's bed, and I was ruining his plans. We went back to Delilah's house to pack our things. While Marcus was loading our suitcases into the car, I pretended to use the bathroom, but instead went to Delilah's bedroom. The door was open, and I could see inside. The bed was perfectly made with fresh sheets, but I noticed something on the nightstand that made my blood boil. There were 2 coffee cups, both half empty. 2 coffee cups in a bedroom where only one person was supposed to be sleeping. I looked closer and saw something else that confirmed my worst fears. On the floor beside the bed was a men's t-shirt, a blue t-shirt that I recognized because I had bought it for Marcus for his birthday last year. My hands started shaking again. Here was proof that Marcus had spent the night in this room, in this bed, with his own mother. The evidence was right there, and they hadn't even bothered to hide it very well. "Zara, you ready to go?" Marcus called from downstairs. I quickly backed out of the room and went downstairs. Delilah was standing by the front door with tears in her eyes. "I'm going to miss having you both here," she said, pulling me into a hug that made my skin crawl. "Promise me you'll come visit soon." "Of course," I lied. Marcus hugged his mother goodbye, and I watched carefully to see if their embrace lasted too long or seemed inappropriate. It looked normal on the surface, but now I knew better. Now I knew that these 2 had been living a lie for who knows how long. On the drive back to our apartment, Marcus was quiet. I could tell he was thinking about something, probably regretting that he wouldn't be able to sneak into his mother's bed tonight. "Your mom seems sad that we're leaving," I said, testing him. "Yeah, she gets lonely in that big house by herself. I worry about her sometimes." "Maybe she should start dating. It's been years since your dad left." Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't think she's interested in that. She's happy with her life the way it is." Happy with her life the way it is. Happy because she has her son to keep her company in ways that make me sick to think about. That night in our own apartment, Marcus tried to be romantic. He lit candles and put on soft music, probably trying to make up for abandoning me on our wedding night. But every time he touched me, all I could think about was where those hands had been the night before. "Is everything okay?" he asked when I pulled away from him. "You seem distant." "I'm just tired," I said, using his own excuse against him. "Come on, Zara. It's our second night as husband and wife. Let's not waste it." The hypocrisy was unbelievable. He was worried about wasting our second night together when he had completely destroyed our first night by cheating on me with his own mother. I let him kiss me and touch me, but the whole time I felt like I was going to be sick. How could I ever be intimate with him again, knowing what I knew? How could I ever trust him or feel safe with him? After Marcus fell asleep, I lay awake planning my next move. I needed more evidence before I could confront them or decide what to do. 1 t-shirt and 2 coffee cups weren't enough. I needed something undeniable, something they couldn't explain away. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention to everything. I noticed that Marcus's phone was always face down, and he never left it lying around anymore. He used to let me use his phone all the time, but now he guarded it like it contained state secrets. I also noticed that he had been getting a lot more text messages lately. His phone would buzz constantly, but he would always check it privately and never tell me who was texting him. "Work stuff," he would say when I asked, but I knew his work schedule. And they weren't texting him about construction jobs at 10 p.m. on a Sunday night. I decided to do some detective work. On Thursday, I told Marcus I was going shopping with Kendra, but instead I drove to Delilah's house and parked down the street. I wanted to see if Marcus was visiting his mother when he was supposed to be at work. Sure enough, at 2:30 p.m., Marcus's truck pulled into Delilah's driveway. He was supposed to be on a job site across town, but here he was at his mother's house in the middle of the day. I waited and watched. He didn't come back out for 2 hours. 2 hours in the middle of a workday when he was supposed to be earning money for our new life together. When he finally came out, his hair was messy and his shirt was wrinkled. Delilah followed him to the door, and even from my car down the street, I could see that she was wearing a bathrobe in the middle of the afternoon. They hugged goodbye at the door, and the hug lasted way too long. When they finally separated, Delilah reached up and fixed Marcus's hair, running her fingers through it in a way that no mother should touch her grown son. I had seen enough. I drove home quickly and was waiting in the living room when Marcus got home from work an hour later. "Hey, baby," he said, giving me a kiss. "How was shopping with Kendra?" "It was good," I said. "How was work?" "Long day. Really tough job site." "I'm exhausted." Another lie. He had just spent 2 hours doing God knows what with his mother, and now he was lying to my face about it. "What kind of job was it?" I asked, testing him. "Oh, just some foundation work. Nothing interesting." I nodded and smiled, but inside I was screaming. Every word out of his mouth was a lie. Our entire relationship was built on lies. That night, I waited until Marcus was asleep and then carefully went through his phone. I had seen him type in his passcode enough times to figure it out. It was Delilah's birthday. Of course it was. What I found in his phone made me want to throw up and throw the phone against the wall at the same time. There were dozens of text messages between Marcus and his mother, and they were not the kind of messages a normal mother and son would send each other. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," one from Delilah read. "I've been thinking about you all day." "Me too," Marcus had replied. "Zara will be at work until 5, so we have plenty of time." There were pictures too, pictures that I will never be able to get out of my head. Pictures that proved beyond any doubt that my husband and my mother-in-law had been having an affair for months. Maybe years, but the worst part was the time stamps. Some of these messages were from our wedding day. While I was getting ready to marry the man I loved, he was texting his mother about meeting up with her later. One message from Delilah was sent at 4 p.m. on our wedding day, just 2 hours before the ceremony. "I can't wait to have you all to myself tonight. She'll never know." Marcus had replied, "I love you more than anything. Tonight is going to be perfect." I sat there in our bathroom, reading message after message, feeling like my heart was being ripped out of my chest. This wasn't just a one-time thing or a moment of weakness. This was a full-blown relationship that had been going on behind my back for who knows how long. The earliest messages I could find went back 8 months. 8 months of lies, 8 months of betrayal, 8 months of the two people I trusted most in the world making a fool out of me. But as I scrolled through more messages, I found something that changed everything. Something that made this situation so much worse than I had ever imagined. In a message from 3 months ago, Delilah had written, "I'm worried she's getting suspicious. Maybe we should cool it down for a while." Marcus had replied, "Don't worry about Zara. She's too trusting to figure it out. We just have to be more careful." Too trusting to figure it out. They were laughing at me. They thought I was too stupid to realize what was happening right under my nose. But then I found the message that made me gasp out loud. It was from Delilah, sent just 2 weeks before our wedding. I found something in her purse when I was helping her with wedding stuff. Birth control pills. She's been lying to you about wanting to start a family right away. Maybe it's time to tell her the truth about us and end this charade. Marcus had replied, "Not yet. Let's get through the wedding first. Then we can figure out how to handle this situation." They were planning to tell me. They were planning to destroy my life, but they wanted to wait until after I had legally tied myself to Marcus through marriage. They wanted to make sure it would be as hard as possible for me to escape. I put the phone back exactly where I found it and went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with everything I had discovered. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated plan to manipulate and humiliate me. But they had made one big mistake. They had underestimated me. They thought I was too trusting to figure it out. But I had figured it out, and now I had all the evidence I needed to destroy both of their lives. As I lay there next to Marcus, listening to him sleep peacefully, while my world fell apart, I started planning my revenge. They wanted to play games? Fine, but they were about to learn that I could play games too, and I played to win. The next morning, I woke up with a smile on my face for the first time since my wedding night. Marcus noticed right away. "You seem happy today," he said, giving me a kiss. "I am happy," I said sweetly. "I feel like I'm finally seeing everything clearly." He had no idea how true that was. I spent the weekend acting like the perfect clueless wife, while secretly planning the most devastating revenge I could imagine. Marcus and Delilah thought they were so smart, but they had no idea what was coming for them. On Monday morning, I called in sick to work and got started on my plan. First, I made copies of all the text messages and photos from Marcus's phone. I printed everything out and saved digital copies in 3 different places. Then I did something that felt amazing. I opened a separate bank account and transferred half of our joint savings into it. After all, if Marcus was planning to leave me anyway, I needed to protect myself financially. Next, I made a very important phone call. "Henderson Law Firm, this is Patricia speaking." "Hi, I'd like to schedule a consultation with a divorce attorney," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Of course. Can I get your name?" "Zara Williams. Well, actually, it's Zara Johnson now. I just got married last weekend." There was a pause. "Oh my, that's quite recent. Are you sure you want to?" "I'm very sure," I interrupted. "How soon can I get an appointment?" They had an opening that afternoon. Perfect. The lawyer, Mrs. Angela Henderson, was a sharp woman in her 50s who had probably seen everything in her 25 years of practice. But when I showed her the evidence I had gathered, even she looked shocked. "This is one of the most disturbing cases I've encountered," she said, flipping through the printed text messages. "And you're absolutely certain these are legitimate?" "I took them directly from his phone," I said. "I can prove it if needed." "Well, the good news is that you have grounds for an annulment rather than a divorce. The marriage was entered into under fraudulent circumstances. The bad news is that this is going to be emotionally devastating for everyone involved. I'm not worried about their emotions, I said coldly. They certainly weren't worried about mine. Mrs. Henderson explained my options, and we agreed on a strategy that would hit them where it hurt most, their reputations and their wallets. In situations like this, the cheating spouse often had to pay significant alimony, even in short marriages. And since Marcus worked in construction, a field where reputation mattered, the scandal could destroy his career. I have to ask, Mrs. Henderson said as we finished up. Are you planning to tell anyone else about this? Family members? Friends? I smiled. Oh, I'm planning to tell everyone. That evening, Marcus came home from work, or from his mother's house, who knows, and I greeted him with a big hug and a home-cooked dinner. This is nice, he said, digging into the meatloaf I'd made. What's the occasion? Can't a wife cook for her husband without a special reason? I asked sweetly. Of course, You've seemed a little distant lately. I was worried that something was wrong. If only he knew how wrong everything was about to get. Actually, I have some exciting news, I said, barely able to contain my excitement. I've been planning a surprise for you and your mom. Marcus's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What kind of surprise? Well, you know how much family means to both of us, and your mom has been so wonderful to me, welcoming me into the family and everything. So I thought it would be nice to have a little celebration with everyone we care about. What do you mean, everyone? I've planned a family dinner for this Saturday. I invited your mom, of course, and my parents, my sister Amani, Kendra, Tyrone, your co-workers from the construction site, some of our neighbors, pretty much everyone important in our lives. The color drained from Marcus's face. Don't you think that's a lot of people? Maybe we should keep it small, just the immediate family. Oh no, I want everyone there. I have something very special I want to share with all of them. I reached across the table and took his hand, something that will bring us all closer together as a family. Marcus looked like he might throw up, which gave me tremendous satisfaction. He mumbled something about checking with his mom to make sure Saturday worked for her, then escaped to the living room to watch TV. I immediately texted Delilah. Hi, Marcus probably told you about the family dinner Saturday. I'm so excited. I have a special announcement to make that I know you'll both love. Can't wait to see you there. She texted back within minutes. What kind of announcement, honey? It's a surprise. You'll find out Saturday with everyone else. I could practically feel her panic through the phone. For the rest of the week, both Marcus and Delilah tried to get me to tell them what my announcement would be. Marcus kept suggesting we cancel the dinner, claiming he was getting sick or that work was too busy. Delilah called me 3 times with various excuses about why Saturday might not work for her, but I held firm. Don't worry, I kept telling them both. It's going to be a night none of us will ever forget. Saturday evening arrived, and our little apartment was packed with people. My parents had driven in from 2 hours away. Amani had brought her husband Jerome and their 2 kids. Kendra came with her new boyfriend Dante. Tyrone was there with his wife Keisha. Even Mrs. Patterson from next door and the Rodriguezes from upstairs had accepted my invitation. Marcus and Delilah both looked like they were attending a funeral instead of a celebration. They barely talked to anyone and kept giving each other worried looks across the room. I had prepared a huge spread of food, and decorated the apartment with balloons and streamers. To everyone else, it looked like a joyful family gathering. Only Marcus and Delilah knew that disaster was coming. Around 8 p.m., when everyone had finished eating and were relaxing with drinks and dessert, I stood up and tapped my glass with a spoon. "Excuse me, everyone. I have an announcement to make." The room got quiet and all eyes turned to me. I looked around at all these people I cared about. My family, my friends, people who had supported Marcus and me throughout our relationship, and who had celebrated our wedding just 2 weeks ago. "First of all, thank you all for being here tonight," I began. "As you know, Marcus and I just got married, and having all of you here means the world to us." There were smiles and murmurs of agreement around the room. "Marriage is all about honesty and trust," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "It's about building a life together based on love and respect and faithfulness to each other." Marcus was staring at me with pure terror in his eyes. Delilah had gone completely pale. "Unfortunately," I said, my voice changing from warm to ice cold, "I've recently discovered that some people don't understand what those values mean." The room was completely silent now. Everyone could sense that something was very wrong. "You see, I found out this week that my husband of 2 weeks has been having an affair." Gasps echoed around the room. My mother put her hand over her mouth. Kendra's eyes went wide with shock. "But the truly disgusting part," I continued, my voice getting louder, "is who he's been having the affair with." Marcus jumped to his feet. "Zara, don't. Sit down." "Marcus," I snapped, and the force in my voice made him sink back into his chair. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the other woman in my husband's life." I turned and pointed directly at Delilah, his own mother. The room exploded. My father stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. My mother started crying. Kendra screamed, "Oh my God!" Several people started shouting at once, but I wasn't finished. "That's right," I yelled over the chaos. "On our wedding night, while I was lying alone in bed, wondering why my new husband was too tired to be with me, he was down the hall having sex with the woman who gave birth to him." Delilah tried to run for the door, but Tyrone's wife Keisha blocked her path. "You sick freak!" Keisha shouted. "How could you do that to this girl?" Marcus was trying to speak, but no one was listening to him. My father looked like he wanted to punch something. Jerome was holding my crying sister, and their kids were asking what was happening. I pulled out a manila envelope and held it up. I have photos, text messages, everything, months of evidence of their disgusting relationship, including messages where they talked about how stupid I was and how they were planning to wait until after the wedding to tell me the truth. "Zara, please," Marcus begged. "Let me explain." "Explain what, Marcus? Explain how you've been sleeping with your mother for 8 months? Explain how you planned our entire wedding while carrying on this sick affair? Explain how you made me look like a fool in front of everyone I love." My mother finally found her voice. "Get out," she said to Marcus and Delilah, her voice shaking with rage. "Both of you get out of here right now before I call the police." "Please, Mrs. Beverly," Delilah said, finally speaking up. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," my mother screamed. "You're a sick woman who seduced her own son and destroyed my daughter's marriage. Get out." the whole room started yelling at Marcus and Delilah to leave. People were calling them disgusting, perverted, sick. Mrs. Patterson said she was going to tell everyone in the neighborhood. Tyrone said he was going to make sure everyone at the construction site knew what kind of man Marcus really was. As Marcus and Delilah tried to push through the crowd toward the door, I called out one final blow. "Oh, and Marcus, I've already filed for an annulment. And I'm keeping half of everything we saved together. Consider it payment for emotional damages." Marcus spun around. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can." I spoke to a lawyer. "When you enter a marriage under fraudulent circumstances, the innocent party is entitled to compensation." Funny how that works, isn't it? They finally made it out the door, and I could hear them arguing loudly in the hallway as they waited for the elevator. The sound of their voices made me feel sick, but also victorious. After they left, the room was quiet for a long time. People didn't know what to say. Finally, Kendra came over and hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "That took incredible strength." My father was still fuming. "I should have known something was wrong with that boy. No man acts that strange on his wedding night unless he's hiding something terrible." "What are you going to do now?" Amani asked. "I'm going to rebuild my life," I said firmly. "I'm 12 years old, I have a good job, and I'm free from a man who never deserved me in the first place." Over the next few hours, as people gradually left, everyone made sure to tell me that I had done the right thing. They promised to support me through whatever came next, and they all agreed that Marcus and Delilah would be outcasts in our community from now on. Mrs. Patterson, bless her heart, said she was going to make sure everyone in our apartment building knew exactly what kind of people they were. "That poor girl," she said, patting my hand. "But you handled it perfectly, dear. Sometimes the only way to deal with evil people is to expose them to the light." After everyone left, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by dirty dishes and leftover food, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite identify. I felt relieved, vindicated, exhausted, and strangely free all at the same time. My phone had been buzzing all evening with calls and texts from Marcus, but I ignored them all. Finally, around midnight, I turned it off completely. The next morning, I woke up and for just a moment, I forgot what had happened. Then reality came rushing back, but instead of feeling sad, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. I made myself coffee and sat down to read the texts that had come in overnight. There were dozens of messages from Marcus, ranging from angry to pleading to desperate. "You've ruined both our lives," one said. "Please call me, we need to talk," said another. "I'm sorry, I love you. Please give me another chance," said a third. I deleted them all without responding. There were also several messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Word was already spreading through our social networks, and people were reaching out to offer support or to ask if the rumors were true. But the most interesting message came from my cousin Jasmine, who worked at the hospital where Delilah had been employed as a nurse for 15 years. "Girl, I heard what happened last night. I just wanted you to know that I reported what you told me to the hospital administration. They take moral conduct very seriously here, especially for people in healthcare. Delilah is going to have some serious explaining to do when she comes to work on Monday." I smiled as I read that. I hadn't even thought about Delilah's job. But Jasmine was right. Hospitals don't like employees who are involved in public scandals. Over the next few weeks, my revenge plan worked better than I had ever imagined. Marcus lost his job at the construction company after word spread to his coworkers and customers. Apparently, several clients canceled projects because they didn't want that sick man working on their homes. Delilah was fired from the hospital after an internal investigation. While they couldn't officially fire her for her personal life, they found several patient privacy violations in her record that gave them grounds for termination. Both of them had to move out of town because the gossip made their lives unbearable. I heard through mutual friends that they were struggling financially and had to move in with one of Delilah's relatives in another state. Meanwhile, I was thriving. The annulment went through quickly thanks to the evidence I had gathered. I got to keep our apartment, half our savings, and most of our wedding gifts since Marcus was considered the guilty party. More importantly, I learned something valuable about myself. I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. I had faced the worst betrayal imaginable, and not only survived it, but turned it into a victory. 6 months later, I was having coffee with Kendra when she asked me if I ever regretted how I handled this situation. "Do you ever wish you had just quietly divorced him, instead of exposing them publicly like that?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. Not for a second. They made the choice to humiliate me, and lie to me, and treat me like I was stupid. They deserved to face the consequences of their actions. But it was so dramatic. "Sometimes dramatic is what the situation calls for," I said. "They thought they could manipulate me and use me and then discard me when it was convenient. Instead, they learned that actions have consequences." Kendra nodded thoughtfully. "You know what? You're right. They got exactly what they deserved." Looking back now, I realize that discovering Marcus and Delilah's affair was actually the best thing that could have happened to me. It showed me their true character before I wasted years of my life with a man who was capable of such betrayal. It taught me to trust my instincts and stand up for myself, and it freed me to find someone who would actually deserve my love and loyalty. The most important lesson I learned was this: when people show you who they really are, believe them. And when they try to make you feel like a fool, show them that you're anything but foolish. Marcus and Delilah thought they were so clever, carrying on their sick relationship behind my back. They thought I was too trusting and naive to ever figure out what they were doing. They were wrong about everything, but especially about me. I am not the kind of person who suffers in silence or lets people walk all over me. I am the kind of person who fights back, who demands justice, and who makes sure that cheaters and liars face the consequences of their choices. Sometimes people ask me if I feel bad about destroying their lives. My answer is always the same. I didn't destroy their lives. They destroyed their own lives with their choices. I just made sure everyone knew about it. And you know what? I sleep like a baby every night because I know I did exactly the right thing. Sometimes kindness means being gentle and forgiving, but sometimes kindness means protecting yourself and making sure that people who hurt others can't keep doing it. I choose to be kind to myself, and that means never again tolerating people who lie to me, cheat on me, or treat me like I don't matter. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it well. The last time I heard anything about Marcus and Delilah, they were still living together in some small town where nobody knew their history. I hope they're happy together because they certainly deserve each other. As for me, I'm building a life filled with people who actually know how to love and be loyal. And that, more than any revenge I could have planned, is the real victory. Did you enjoy my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's connect in the comments. If you liked this story, you can support me by sending a super thanks. It helps me keep bringing you more stories like this. Thank you so much for your kind support. I look forward to reading your comments about the story. On the screen, you'll see 2 new life stories I highly recommend, and there's plenty more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next life story. With love and respect.